The crystal hall sparkled with light from 1,000 worlds. Taesung walked through the massive doors, his boots making soft sounds on the polished floor. Around him, aliens of every shape and size turned to look. Their eyes went wide when they saw his face. The scars covered most of his visible skin. Burns marked his left cheek and neck. Blade cuts ran across his arms. His hands showed the rough texture of old wounds that had healed badly. In a galaxy where medicine could erase any injury without a trace, Taesung looked like something from a nightmare. "Is that the human representative?" Someone whispered in a language the translator device caught. "How primitive. They cannot even heal their wounded properly." Taesung kept walking. He had heard worse. Hysun walked beside him, her face tight with controlled anger. She was a diplomat trained to smile and negotiate. But even she struggled to hide her feelings when the insult started. A tall figure blocked their path. Prince Daewon of the Velkari stood there, his blue skin perfect and unmarked. His people valued beauty above all else. To them, scars were signs of failure. "Welcome to the council, human," Daewon said. His voice carried across the hall. "Tell me, does your species not know how to use medical technology? Or do you simply enjoy looking like monsters?" Laughter rippled through the gathered aliens. Taesung stopped and looked up at the prince. His expression never changed. "We know how to heal," Taesung said quietly. "We choose not to erase everything." "How barbaric," another voice called out. More laughter followed. Hysun started to speak, but Taesung touched her arm gently. She fell silent. They continued to their assigned seats. The mockery followed them every step. Only two beings did not laugh. Commander Jiwoo stood near the human section, her face hard as stone. She had served with Taesung during the border wars. She knew what those scars meant. The other was Elder Krath, a creature made of living stone who had existed for thousands of years. The ancient alien simply watched with dark, knowing eyes. The council session began. Representatives from dozens of worlds discussed trade routes and treaties. Taesung sat quietly, ignoring the occasional glances and whispered comments about his appearance. He had not come here to make friends. Then everything changed. An alarm cut through the hall. Red lights flashed. A junior officer rushed to the council leader's platform, carrying a data pad. The leader's face went pale as he read the information. "The Devourers have returned," the leader announced. The hall erupted into chaos. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting questions. Some species had only heard legends about the Devourers. Others had ancient records that spoke of a machine race that had nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy long ago. 3 colonies in the outer reaches have gone silent, the leader continued, his voice shaking. "Our scouts report massive machine ships. They are consuming everything. Metal, organic matter, entire stations." Fear spread through the hall like fire. The Devourers were supposed to be extinct, destroyed by the ancient precursors in a war that had cost billions of lives. Now they were back. "We must form a defense force," the leader declared. "Each species will send their finest warriors. We will stop this threat before it spreads." Prince Daewon stood immediately. "The Velkari offer our champion warriors. We will show these machines the power of the council." Other species volunteered their champions. The Kronar sent their massive gene-enhanced soldiers. The Sylphid offered their psionic fighters. Every major species committed their best forces. When it came to Earth's turn, all eyes turned to Taesung. He stood slowly. "Earth will send its warriors," he said simply. The laughter started again, louder this time. "You?" Daewon looked genuinely amused. "Humanity is sending their scarred pet to fight an extinction-level threat? This is not a war for primitives. This requires real warriors. We will send who we choose," Jiwoo said sharply from her position. "Taesung speaks for Earth's military." "Then Earth has already lost," someone called out. The hall filled with mocking voices. Taesung sat back down. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He simply waited for the session to end. Hysun looked like she wanted to scream at them all, but she held her tongue. As the meeting broke up, the various champions gathered in groups, discussing strategy and comparing equipment. They had the best armor, the finest weapons, the most advanced technology their civilizations could provide. They looked like heroes from ancient stories. Taesung walked past them in his simple, worn combat gear. It had been repaired many times. The armor plates showed scratches and dents. His only personal weapon was an old knife in a leather sheath. "Pathetic," someone muttered. Elder Krath appeared beside Taesung as he headed toward the exit. The ancient Stoneborn moved silently despite his massive size. Human, Krath said. His voice sounded like grinding rocks. A question, if you permit. Taesung stopped and turned. Yes, Elder? Were you at the Battle of Black Ridge? The change in Taesung was immediate. His eyes went dark. His jaw tightened. For the first time since entering the hall, real emotion showed on his scarred face. I was there, he said quietly. Krath studied him for a long moment. How many humans fought at Black Ridge? 10,000 entered the battle, 237 walked away. And you were one of them. Yes. Krath nodded slowly. Then perhaps we have a chance after all. The ancient alien placed one massive stone hand on Taesung's shoulder. The other species do not understand. They have forgotten what real war costs. But the Stoneborn remember. We remember the last time the Devourers came. We remember what it took to stop them. What did it take? Taesung asked. Everything, Krath said. The precursors gave everything. They won, but their species never recovered. The galaxy promised to never forget that sacrifice. He paused. But we did forget. We became soft, comfortable. We have not fought a real war in 1,000 years. We have, Taesung said. Yes. Earth fought itself. You learned lessons the rest of us have forgotten. That is why you keep your scars, is it not? To remember what was paid. Every scar has a name, Taesung said. Every mark is a friend I lost, a mistake I made, a price I paid. I keep them so I never forget what war really means. Krath nodded again. The others mock you now. They see barbarism. But when the Devourers come, they will understand. They will see what I see. What do you see, Elder? A survivor. Someone who has already paid the prices they have not yet imagined. Someone who knows how to fight when everything is on the line. Krath turned to leave, then looked back. They fear your scars because they do not understand them. Soon they will fear you for a different reason. They will fear you because you are willing to do what they cannot. The ancient alien walked away, leaving Taesung standing alone in the empty hall. Outside he could hear the other champions laughing and boasting about their coming victories. Taesung touched the burn scar on his neck. He remembered the chemical fire that had caused it. He remembered the friends who had not survived that day. He remembered Black Ridge and the 9 days of hell that had left him one of the few survivors. The galaxy was about to learn a hard truth. Humanity had already survived its own apocalypse. They had fought and died and learned the cruelest lessons. These scars were not marks of weakness. They were proof that humans knew how to survive when survival seemed impossible. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would understand why even the mightiest kings should fear a human warrior. The Coalition fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Frontier Station Gamma 7. What they saw made even the bravest warriors feel cold fear. 3 massive Devourer warships surrounded the station. They were unlike anything in the galaxy's databases. Angular and dark, made of metal that seemed to absorb light. Cutting beams tore into the station's hull, ripping it apart piece by piece. The machines harvested everything, feeding the debris into their hulls. By the ancestors, Prince Daewon whispered from his command ship. The Coalition force was impressive. 12 species had sent their champions. The Velkari brought elegant strike teams in shining armor. The Kronar sent warriors as big as bears, their muscles enhanced by genetic engineering. The Sylphid contributed fighters who could kill with their minds alone. Every champion had trained their whole lives for combat. Taesung arrived in a simple assault shuttle. His gear looked ancient compared to the others. Standard issue human combat armor, patched and repaired many times, a basic rifle, his old knife. No special enhancements, no advanced shields, no energy weapons. A Kronar warrior laughed when he saw Taesung's equipment. Is that all humans bring to war? We have weapons that can level mountains. Taesung said nothing. He checked his rifle and waited for orders. The battle began badly. The Coalition forces attacked the Devourer ships with everything they had. Energy weapons flashed across space. Missiles streaked toward their targets. The Devourer's shields absorbed it all. Then the machines deployed their hunter units. Smaller robots poured from the warships like angry insects. They were fast, deadly, and terrifyingly smart. They learned and adapted within minutes of encountering each fighting style. The Velkari attacked with coordinated energy strikes. The hunters adapted their shields. The Kronar used plasma cannons. The hunters learned to dodge. The Sylphid tried mental attacks. The hunters had no minds to attack, only cold logic. Warriors started dying. The casualty reports climbed rapidly. 5%, 10%, 15%. Pull back, Prince Daewon ordered. Reform defensive positions. The coalition forces retreated, all except one. Tae-sung moved forward, heading toward the damaged station. Debris floated everywhere. Hunter units prowled the corridors. Human. What are you doing? Jiwoo's voice came through his communicator. Return to formation. Tae-sung switched off his communicator. The other champions watched their displays in confusion as the lone human entered the station. Some expected him to die within seconds. They had seen how fast the hunters could kill. What happened next shocked them all. Tae-sung moved through the station like he belonged there. When hunters appeared, he fought them with brutal efficiency. His rifle barked in short, controlled bursts. When a hunter adapted to his bullets, he dropped the gun and used his knife. When his knife blade broke against metal armor, he grabbed a piece of debris and used it as a club. A Velkari officer monitoring the security feeds called others to watch. How is he still alive? The human fought nothing like the other champions. There was no elegance, no style, no concern for form. He used everything around him as a weapon. Bulkhead doors became crushing traps. Exposed wiring became electrical hazards. Broken devourer parts became improvised tools. Most disturbing was how he handled injuries. A hunter's blade cut his arm. Tae-sung barely paused. He wrapped the wound with tape and kept fighting. A plasma burst burned his leg. He adjusted his stance and continued. A heavy impact from a hunter knocked him down, and he simply rolled, grabbed a metal pipe and beat the machine until it stopped moving. He fights like he expects to be hurt, Daewon said quietly. Like pain is just part of his plan. Inside the station, Tae-sung found a group of trapped civilians. They were Velkari, including some who had mocked him in the council halls. They huddled in a cargo bay, surrounded by hunter units trying to cut through the door. The door would not hold much longer. Tae-sung arrived as it finally breached. 6 hunter units poured through. The civilians screamed. They were going to die. Then the scarred human stepped between them and the machines. What followed lasted 7 minutes. It felt like 7 hours to the civilians watching. Tae-sung held the doorway alone. 6 hunters became 4. 4 became 2. More hunters arrived from deeper in the station. 10. 15. 20. He ran out of ammunition. He threw his empty rifle at a hunter's sensor cluster and blinded it. He used his knife until the blade snapped. He grabbed a hunter's severed limb and used it to damage others. When the limb broke, he used his bare hands, ripping at wiring and components. Burns covered his body. Deep cuts bled freely. His armor was shattered. But he did not step back. He could not. Behind him were people who needed to survive. The evacuation shuttle arrived on the 7th minute. The civilians ran aboard, not looking back at the scarred warrior who had saved them. Tae-sung held the beer line for 30 more seconds while the shuttle detached and fled. Then he collapsed. The coalition forces finally secured the station 2 hours later. They found Tae-sung in the medical bay, barely conscious. The medics worked frantically to stabilize him. His injuries were horrific. 3rd-degree burns covered 40% of his body. Deep lacerations required immediate surgery. His ribs were broken. 1 lung had collapsed. Medical scans showed he had fought the last 3 minutes with these critical injuries. How? The medical chief kept asking. How did he stay conscious? How did he keep fighting? Prince Daewon came to the medical bay. He stood over Tae-sung's bed looking at the human's new wounds. They would leave scars adding to the collection already covering his body. Your people, Daewon said quietly. You could heal all of this. You could erase these scars. Why do you not? Tae-sung's eyes opened. His voice was rough with pain. Because I earned them. Everyone is a reminder of what humans are willing to pay. Pay for what? For survival. For protecting others. For doing what is necessary. Tae-sung coughed, and pain crossed his face. The devourers will not stop. They will keep coming. They will adapt to every weapon, every tactic. You cannot fight them with elegance or style. Then how do we fight them? The way humans learn to fight, expecting to be hurt, planning around being wounded, using everything, every resource, every moment, accepting that survival means paying terrible prices. Day One was quiet for a long time. Around them, medics worked to save Taesung's life. The prince watched as they patched the human back together, knowing that in a few weeks these wounds would become scars, permanent marks that Taesung would refuse to erase. What kind of war creates soldiers like you? Daewon finally asked. The kind humanity fought against itself, Taesung said. The kind where there is no mercy, no quarter, no rules. The kind where you learn to keep fighting when everything says you should stop. The kind that teaches you pain is just information, and information keeps you alive. The prince left the medical bay troubled. He found Jiwoo in the command center. Your warrior saved 17 Velkari civilians today, Daewon said. Some of them mocked him just days ago, yet he protected them without hesitation. That is what we do, Jiwoo replied. We remember the prices we have paid. We remember what we learned, and we do not let others suffer what we have suffered, even if they hate us for our scars. Daewon looked out at the damaged station. The coalition had taken 30% casualties in this first engagement. By galactic standards, it was a disaster. Entire species were considering withdrawal, but the human forces had not lost a single warrior. Not because they had not fought, but because they expected these losses. They planned for them. 30% casualties was, to humans, acceptable for a defensive action. The prince realized something that chilled him. The galaxy had been at peace so long, they had forgotten what real war cost. They measured victories in minimal losses and clean battles. Humans measured victory in survival. They would pay any price, take any wound, make any sacrifice. Because they had learned the hardest truth. Sometimes surviving means becoming something terrible. And as Taesung lay in the medical bay, earning new scars to add to his collection, the galaxy began to understand. They had mocked his wounds. They had called humans primitive and barbaric. They were wrong. Those scars were not marks of failure. They were proof that humanity knew something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. They knew how to win when winning was not supposed to be possible. The coalition established defensive positions across 3 systems. They expected the Devourers to attack again soon. In the command center, Heesun studied casualty reports and worried. She found Taesung on the observation deck. His new wounds had healed enough for him to move around. Fresh bandages covered his arms and chest. In a few weeks, they would become scars like all the others. You should be resting, she said. Resting does not prepare us for what is coming. He looked out at the stars. The Devourers will not stop. They will learn from this battle and adapt. The Council is talking about retreat. 30% casualties in one engagement. They are calling it a catastrophic defeat. It was a victory. We saved the station and learned how the Devourers fight. Heesun sat beside him. They had known each other for 5 years, since Earth joined the Galactic Council. But she realized she knew very little about his past. Where did you get the scars? She asked. The old ones, I mean. Before you became a soldier. Taesung was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak. 30 years ago, Earth was destroying itself. We called them the resource wars. Water, food, energy, everything was running out. Nations collapsed. Armies fought over scraps. I was 12 when my home was caught between 3 warring factions. His hand touched the burn scar on his neck. Chemical weapons. One faction used them to clear civilians from contested areas. My family was in the wrong place. The fire burned for hours. He paused. My parents did not survive. I did, barely. Heesun felt her throat tighten. I am sorry. By 14, I was with a militia group. Just children with guns, really. We fought for food, for territory, for survival. That is where I learned to use a blade. He showed her the scars on his arms. Every cut is a lesson I learned about staying alive. When did you become a real soldier? When the AI war started. A rogue artificial intelligence seized control of automated weapons systems. It decided humanity was the problem and tried to erase us. The remaining human factions finally stopped fighting each other. We united for the first time in years. The Battle of Black Ridge, Hysun said, remembering what Elder Krath had asked. Taesung's face went hard. 10,000 soldiers against an endless wave of machines. We held a mountain pass for 9 days. The AI kept learning, kept adapting, kept sending more units. We lost hundreds every day, then thousands. We ran out of ammunition on day 7, out of food on day 8. On day 9, we fought with knives and rocks in our bare hands. How did you survive? By refusing to die. By watching friends fall and knowing their sacrifice meant something. By understanding that pain is temporary but failure is permanent. He looked at his scarred hands. When it ended, 237 of us walked out of Black Ridge. We were the only thing standing between the AI and 3 million civilians behind our lines. Hysun understood now. The scars were not from one battle or one war. They were the accumulated price of a lifetime of fighting. Each mark represented a moment when Taesung had chosen to keep going, when anyone else would have stopped. An alarm interrupted them. The Devourers were attacking. The battle was massive. Over 100 Devourer ships hit the coalition defensive lines. They had learned from the first engagement. Their tactics were better, their weapons more effective, their hunter units deadlier. The coalition lines buckled. Prince Daewon's forces took heavy casualties. The Kronar warriors were pushed back. The Sylphid minefighters were overwhelmed by the sheer number of machines attacking them. In the command center, leaders argued. 40% casualties now. By galactic standards, this was complete defeat. Species were demanding withdrawal. We must retreat, the council military leader said. We have lost too many. 40% is not defeat, Jiwoo said coldly. Everyone turned to look at the human commander. Human military doctrine plans for 60% casualties in critical engagements. What you call catastrophic, we call a normal defensive action. You are mad, a Kronar general said. No species can sustain such losses. Humanity can. Humanity has. We learned how during the resource wars and the AI war. We learned that victory is not about minimal losses. Victory is about accomplishing the objective no matter the cost. Taesung entered the command center. I have a plan to stop the Devourers, but it will require tactics no other species would accept. He explained his strategy. Draw the Devourers into a trap using a bait force. Hold a position against overwhelming odds while the main fleet maneuvered into attack position. Estimated survival rate for the bait force less than 10%. That is a suicide mission, Daewon said. That is a necessary mission, Taesung corrected. Someone has to hold the line. The question is who is willing to pay the price. The human contingent volunteered immediately. Every single one. They understood what Taesung was asking. They understood because they were all like him, survivors of Earth's brutal history, trained to accept casualties that would break other species. Elder Krath spoke up from his position. The Stoneborn remember the last time the Devourers came. We remember what stopped them. The ancient alien looked around the room. The precursors fought like these humans. They accepted terrible losses. They paid impossible prices. They won, but their casualties were so high they never recovered as a civilization. Then we cannot ask anyone to fight that way, the council leader said. But the humans already paid that price, Krath continued. On their own world. Against themselves. They have already become what the precursors became. That is why they keep their scars. Not as marks of shame, but as proof they understand the cost of survival. Daewon stood. I will join the human force. My troops and I volunteer for the mission. Prince, you cannot, his advisor started. I mocked him for his scars, Daewon said, looking at Taesung. I called his species barbaric. But I was wrong. They are not barbaric. They are survivors who learned the hardest lessons. If I am to call myself a warrior, I must learn what that truly means. Other champions began volunteering. Not all of them, but enough. They were starting to understand. The galaxy had forgotten what real war demanded. Humanity remembered. As the planning session continued, Hysun pulled Taesung aside. You are planning to die, are not you? I am planning to accomplish the mission, he said. Whether I survive is secondary. That is what I thought. She touched his arm carefully, avoiding the bandages. When this is over, if you survive, promise me something. What? Tell the galaxy your story, all of it. Not just the tactics in the battles. Tell them about the 12-year-old boy who survived chemical fire. Tell them about Black Ridge. Tell them why you keep your scars. They need to understand that humanity is not cruel or barbaric. You are just willing to pay prices others will not. Taesung nodded slowly. If I survive, you will, she said with more confidence than she felt. Because that is what humans do. You survive when survival should be impossible. The meeting ended. The coalition forces prepared for the trap. The human contingent checked their gear, knowing most of them would not come back. They did not complain. They did not hesitate. They simply prepared, each one carrying the weight of Earth's brutal history. Taesung stood with them, his scarred face calm. These were his people, survivors all. They understood that sometimes victory required becoming monsters. They understood that peace was built on sacrifice, and they were willing to pay the price just as they always had. Because that is what it meant to be human. Arcturus Station hung in space like a metal giant. Built into a massive asteroid, it was a mining facility the size of a city. Today it would become a battlefield. The trap was set. Taesung commanded the defense force, humans and volunteers from other species. Their job was simple and terrible. Hold the station for 6 hours while appearing to be the main coalition force. The Devourers had to commit fully to the assault. Every minute the machines focused on Arcturus was another minute for the real fleet to get into position. Prince Daewon stood beside Taesung in the command center. The Velkari prince had insisted on fighting at the front. His second-in-command, Captain Nayoung, had tried to stop him. Your father will be furious, Nayoung had said. My father needs to learn what real warriors look like, Daewon replied. Now they waited. Sensors detected the Devourer fleet approaching. 50 capital ships, thousands of hunter units. More firepower than the defenders had any hope of stopping. 6 hours, Taesung said to his troops. That is all we need. 6 hours and we save millions of lives. Whatever it costs. The Devourers arrived like a dark swarm. They did not hesitate. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked with everything they had. The battle began. The station's outer sections were lost in the first 30 minutes. Cutting beams tore through metal. Hunter units poured inside by the hundreds. The defenders fell back to prepared positions, fighting for every corridor. This was where human tactics showed their true nature. Teams fought with overlapping fields of fire. When one position was overrun, the survivors immediately fell back to the next prepared position. There was no panic, no confusion. They expected to lose ground. They planned for it. A group of Velkari volunteers learned quickly. Their leader was injured in the first hour, his leg badly damaged. In Velkari military doctrine, wounded warriors were immediately evacuated to medical facilities. I can still shoot, the Velkari warrior said, trying to stand. Then stay and shoot, a human sergeant replied. She handed him extra ammunition. You can walk later. Right now we need your rifle. The injured Velkari warrior stayed. He fired from a supported position while others moved around him. It was ugly and painful and nothing like the elegant warfare he had trained for, but it worked. Prince Daewon saw this pattern repeated everywhere. Humans fought through injuries that would have removed other species from combat. A fractured arm? Switch to one-handed weapons. Damaged leg? Take a defensive position. Burns and cuts? Keep fighting until you physically cannot. They plan to be hurt, Daewon realized. Their entire tactical doctrine assumes casualties. 2 hours into the battle, the Devourers breached the intersections. Hunter units adapted to every weapon the defenders used. Energy weapons became ineffective. Ballistic rounds were dodged or blocked. Even explosives were countered by the machine's learning systems. So the humans changed tactics. They stopped using standard weapons entirely. A mining laser meant for cutting rock was redirected to slice through Devourer units. Cargo loading equipment became crushing traps. Even the station's life support system was weaponized, decompressing sections to freeze hunter units, then repressurizing to shatter their brittle metal. Use everything, Taesung's voice came over communications. They adapt to weapons. Make everything a weapon. The defenders fought with creativity born from desperation. They collapsed corridors to create choke points. They overloaded power cores to create explosions. They even used destroyed Devourer parts to damage other machines. But casualties mounted. 40%, 50%, 60%. 3 hours in, the situation became critical. The Devourers had pushed the defenders back to the core sections of the station. Taesung's forces controlled less than 20% of the facility. In orbit, Jiwoo watched the casualty reports with a face like stone. Every number was a person. Every percentage was dozens of lives. But she did not order a retreat. She knew what Taesung and every human down there understood. The mission was not about saving the station. It was about buying time, 4 hours. The defenders held the core sections with desperation and blood. Taesung fought in the front lines, his rifle long since discarded. He used a broken piece of machinery as a club, smashing hunter units with brutal efficiency. A plasma cutter hit him in the side. The same type of weapon that had given him the burn scars 30 years ago during the resource wars. The new wound was nearly identical to the old ones. The pain was incredible. Taesung barely slowed down. He used the moment when the hunter unit was recharging to close the distance. A magnetic charge, placed directly against the machine's core. The hunter exploded. Daewon saw it happen. "How?" he gasped. "That wound should have dropped you." "Pain is just information," Taesung said, his voice tight. "It tells me I am still alive enough to fight." The prince felt something change inside him. He had trained his entire life in combat academies. He had studied warfare as an art form. He had believed himself a warrior. Now he understood. He was not a warrior. He was a soldier who played at war. These humans were real warriors, forged in the kind of fire that destroyed civilizations. 5 hours. The defenders held only the central core. 70% casualties. The devourers pressed in from all sides. Ammunition was almost gone. Most defenders fought with improvised weapons or bare hands. "Fleet is in position." Yesun's voice came through from the command ship. "Taesung, you did it. The devourers committed everything. Now evacuate. We will execute the strike, but there was a problem." The devourers had destroyed every evacuation shuttle in the station. There was no way out. Taesung looked at his surviving defenders. Humans, Velkari, Kronar, Sylphid, others. All bloodied, all exhausted, all understanding what came next. "Fleet, execute the strike," Taesung transmitted calmly. "We bought you the time. Do not waste it. Taesung, we can find another way." Jiwoo's voice broke. "Execute the strike, Commander." "That is an order." The defenders gathered in the core, looking out through the station's remaining viewports. They could see the coalition fleet emerging from behind the planet, all weapons charged. 6 hours of holding the line had worked. The devourers had committed their entire force to taking Arcturus Station. Now they would all die together. The devourers and the defenders who had trapped them here. Daewon stood beside Taesung. "I understand now why you keep your scars. You wear them so you never forget what victory costs." "Every battle I survived, I lost friends," Taesung said quietly. "These scars remind me of them. Remind me that survival is not the goal. Protecting what matters is." The fleet prepared to fire. The strike would destroy everything. The Devourer fleet and Arcturus Station both. A necessary sacrifice, then something unexpected happened. Dozens of small ships appeared on sensors. Civilian transports. Mining haulers. Personal craft. Ships from nearby colonies, from trading posts, from refugee convoys. "We heard what you did for us," a civilian captain transmitted. "You held the line so we could escape. Now we are holding it for you." The civilian fleet swarmed toward Arcturus Station under heavy fire. They were not military ships. They had no armor, no weapons, no training. But they came anyway. Hundreds of civilians died in the next few minutes, their ships torn apart by devourer fire. But they kept coming. They docked with the station wherever they could, pulling defenders aboard in desperate, chaotic evacuations. Taesung watched in stunned silence as a Velkari civilian pilot brought her small transport directly against a breached hull section. Hunter units were still inside. She did not care. She opened her hatch and screamed for defenders to get aboard. 70% of the remaining defenders were evacuated before the coalition fleet fired. The antimatter strike was devastating. Every devourer ship exploded in a cascade of destruction. Arcturus Station broke apart, torn to pieces by the blast, but the trap had worked. The devourer advance was broken. Their fleet was gone. On the command ship, Taesung collapsed. The pain he had been suppressing finally overwhelmed him. Medics rushed to help, but even unconscious, his hand clutched the old knife at his belt. Daewon sat beside him in the medical bay, his own body covered in new wounds. Burns, cuts, bruises. The Velkari medical staff wanted to heal them immediately. To erase every mark, no, Daewon said. Leave them. I want to remember this. Remember what we paid. Remember what they taught me. Young looked at her prince in shock. You want to keep scars? Like a human? Yes, Daewon said, looking at Taesung's unconscious form. Because now I understand. Scars are not marks of failure. They are proof you were willing to pay the price when it mattered. The battle was over. 312 defenders dead. 89 more would not survive their wounds. Over 1,400 civilians had died in the evacuation runs, but millions lived because of what happened at Arcturus Station. The Devourer threat was ended. The galaxy was saved. And across the coalition, warriors from every species looked at their wounds and made the same choice as Daewon. They kept their scars. They wanted to remember what humans had taught them, that real warriors are not the ones who fight without fear. They are the ones who fight despite being terrified. They are not the ones who take no wounds. They are the ones who keep fighting after being wounded. Real warriors understand what Taesung's scars had always meant. Survival demands payment. 3 months after the Battle of Arcturus Station, the Galactic Council met again in the Crystal Halls. But everything had changed. The Devourer threat was over. With their fleet destroyed and their advance broken, the remaining machine units had scattered into deep space. Coalition forces hunted them down one by one, using tactics learned from humans. But victory had come at a terrible price. Over 140,000 warriors dead or wounded. By human standards, acceptable casualties for a war of survival. By galactic standards, the highest death toll in recorded history. Taesung walked through the crystal halls again. His body bore new scars from Arcturus Station, burns, cuts, the marks of brutal combat. He had refused all treatments that would erase them, just as he always did. But this time no one mocked him. Warriors from dozens of species now bore scars of their own. They had chosen to keep them, following the human example. The halls that once echoed with laughter now held respectful silence as the scarred human passed. Prince Daewon met him at the entrance. The Velkari prince's perfect blue skin now showed the marks of battle. A burn on his shoulder. A blade scar on his arm. His people had been horrified at first. Now they were beginning to understand. My father has arrived, Daewon said. King Taehyun himself. He wishes to speak with you. This was unprecedented. The king of the Velkari Prime World rarely left his throne. His presence here meant something significant was happening. The council session began with ceremonies honoring the fallen. 312 names were read aloud, the defenders who died at Arcturus Station. Taesung stood at attention through all of them. He knew every name. He remembered every face. After the ceremony, King Taehyun requested a private audience with Taesung. The king dismissed his guards, another unprecedented act. In a secured chamber, the ruler of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations stood face to face with the scarred human warrior. For a long moment, neither spoke. My son tells me you saved his life 7 times during the battle, the king finally said. That you fought with wounds that would have killed any of our kind. That you gave orders to sacrifice yourself and your troops so the fleet could win. I did my duty, Your Majesty, Taesung replied. No. The king shook his head. You did something far more dangerous. You showed the galaxy what we had forgotten, what we gave up when we reached for the stars and decided war was too costly. Taesung remained silent, unsure where this was going. King Taehyun walked to the window, looking out at the gathered ships. Before the Devourers returned, the Galactic Council was dying. Not in body, but in spirit. We had grown soft, comfortable. Our military forces existed for ceremonies and parades. We resolved conflicts through diplomacy because none of us wanted to pay the cost of real war. He turned back to face Taesung. The Devourers should have destroyed us. We had forgotten how to fight with everything on the line. But you humans remembered. You could not afford to forget, because your own world taught you the cruelest lessons. We survived by learning from our mistakes, Taesung said. You survived by becoming what the rest of us feared to become. The king corrected. Warriors who understand that some things are worth dying for. My son came back from Arcturus Station a different person. He is organizing volunteer forces now, teaching our soldiers human tactics. He is preparing our military to fight the way you fight. Is that not good? It is necessary. And that is what terrifies me. The king's voice dropped. Do you understand what you have done? You have taught the galaxy how to wage total war again. Other species are adopting human military doctrine. They accept higher casualties now. They train warriors to fight wounded and outnumbered. The galaxy is becoming more dangerous because of what you showed us. Taesung considered this carefully. You think that is bad? I think it is unavoidable, the king said, but also frightening. In 100 years, when the next great conflict comes, armies across the galaxy will fight like you taught us at Arcturus Station. They will accept 50% casualties as normal. They will use tactics that require sacrifice. They will keep fighting with wounds that once meant medical removal. The king stepped closer. That is why I fear you. Not because humans are cruel or evil, but because you have already paid every price there is to pay. You have nothing left to lose, which makes you the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Then, to Taesung's shock, King Taehyun knelt. A king, kneeling before a common soldier. I came to ask you something, human. When conflicts arise between our species in the future, will humanity try diplomacy first? Because now that I have seen what you are capable of, I know no species wants to face humans in total war. Taesung helped the king stand. Your Majesty, humans have always preferred peace. We know the cost of war too well to want it, but we also know the cost of failing to fight when necessary. So I will make this promise: humanity will always seek another way. But if there is no other way, we will do what we have always done. We will pay the price that needs to be paid. The king studied his face. That is what I feared you would say, and that is exactly why the galaxy needs you. He extended his hand in the human custom. The Valkyrie will stand with humanity. We have learned from you. We will not forget the lessons of Arcturus Station. When the council reconvened, multiple species formally requested human military advisors. They wanted to learn human tactics, human resilience, human willingness to accept costs for strategic goals. Humanity, once mocked as primitive, had become the most sought-after military power in the galaxy. The council officially designated humanity as a protected military power. It was a new classification, created specifically for Earth. It meant the galaxy recognized humans as essential for defense, but also acknowledged they were too dangerous to provoke. Later, Haesun found Taesung on the observation deck. Earth hung in the distance, blue and beautiful and scarred by its own brutal history. They are calling you a hero, she said. The scarred savior. The warrior who taught the galaxy to fight again. Taesung shook his head. I am not a hero. Heroes do extraordinary things. I just did what any human would do. What we were taught by our own history. Survive, protect, pay the price. Was it worth it? All those casualties? All that pain? He touched the new scar on his shoulder. A burn from Arcturus Station. Every person who died there saved millions who would have died if the devourers had continued. Was it worth it? Ask the colonies that still stand. Ask the civilians who were evacuated. Ask Prince Daewon and the others who learned that survival sometimes demands everything. The council fears us now. Good, Taesung said simply. Fear breeds caution. Caution breeds negotiation. Negotiation prevents wars. If the galaxy fears humanity enough to try every other option first, then maybe all these scars will have been worth it. He looked at his scarred hands. That is the real lesson of Arcturus Station. It is not that humans are great warriors. It is that we are willing to become monsters so others do not have to. We will carry the scars so the rest of the galaxy can heal theirs. A memorial service was held on Earth for the 312 defenders who died at Arcturus Station. Their names were carved in stone as Elder Krath had promised. Taesung stood among their families, his presence a living reminder of what was sacrificed. Representatives from dozens of species attended. Prince Daewon came, his father beside him. Elder Krath was there, ancient and patient. They had all come to pay respects to the humans who taught the galaxy a hard truth. Jiwoo approached as the ceremony ended. The council is requesting you lead a new coalition military training program. They want you to teach other species human warfare doctrine. Will you accept? Taesung looked at the memorial stone. All those names, all those lives. I will accept. But I will teach them more than tactics. I will teach them why humans keep their scars, why we remember every cost, why we fight the way we fight. And what is that? Because someone has to, he said quietly. Because in a universe full of threats, there needs to be a species willing to stand in the fire, take the wounds, pay the prices others cannot. That is what humanity is. That is what we have always been. The species that survives by being willing to do what others will not. He touched his scars one final time. the burns from chemical fire when he was 12, the blade cuts from fighting as a desperate teenager, the marks from Black Ridge and 100 other battles, and now the new scars from Arcturus Station. They mocked these once, Taesung said, called them barbaric and primitive. But every scar is a story. Every mark is a lesson. The galaxy is learning now that humans wear our history on our skin, not out of pride but as a promise. What kind of promise? That no matter how bad things get, no matter how terrible the threat, humanity will still be standing. Scarred, wounded, bloodied, but standing. Because that is what we learned to do when our own world tried to destroy us. We learned to survive when survival should have been impossible. The representatives began to depart. The families of the fallen gathered around the memorial. And Taesung stood there, a living monument to human resilience, bearing his scars like badges of honor. The galaxy had learned its lesson. They understood now why even the mightiest kings feared a human warrior, not because humans were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because humanity had already survived the